Good day, everybody. Barry speaking for Voters Voice. Hope you're all well. It's been more than a month, more like 6 weeks since my last video, so it should have given you enough of a rest to allow you to tolerate this one if you want to watch it. Endeavouring to keep this fairly short today, but there's so much going on around us that it's very difficult to keep relevancy while trying to arrive at some brevity. However, I'll do my best. My first issue is one that I have repeatedly brought to the attention of those who do watch these videos, and that is the banking system here in New Zealand. The bank last year took 7.21 billion with a B out of in profits from New Zealand. 7.21 billion. While the citizens of this country are struggling to pay their debts. All indications are that the New Zealand government is condoning and indeed assisting the banks in closing down their branches and their ATMs and forcing the citizens towards total digital currency. The banks throughout the world are in desperate straits. The system of their banking world is collapsing. They are desperately looking around for the means to retain control of the situation. And digital currency is one of them. There is a place for digital currency, without a doubt, as an adjunct to cash, but not as a replacement for it. The adjunct of the digital currency could be very useful in international payment systems, in intercompany payment systems, in transferring of money cheaply, quickly and efficiently. If it is allowed to be that way, of course the banks will still want to retain their vice-like grip on the transactions and the profit coming from them. But in theory, digital currency would allow us some freedom from that bank control. However, if our complete transaction systems down to the last 10 cents are conducted through digital currency, they have complete control of you. And along with the bank's control of you come government control of you. So governments are not at all interested in thwarting the bank's drive to get you locked into a system where they can control every single thing you do. Our government keeps repeating that they are all for keep retaining cash. Their so-called declared policy says they must retain cash to retain a democratic society. But everything they do belies that statement. They are allowing the banks to do away with cash. Willy-nilly closing branches all over the country, ATMs, and now they are refusing, in some instances, even Kiwi Bank in branches are refusing to accept cash from businesses. If we remain silent on this issue, as so far the citizens have, it is inevitable we shall lose the fight to retain cash. And with that loss of the use of cash will go the last bastion of our freedoms. Mr. Luxon has already raised the first murmurs of the possibility of privatising Kiwibank, which is the very mechanism that could be used by our government to put real competition in the way of the big four banks who are controlling completely the economy of this country. Through their systematic control of the finances, they direct in which direction this country's going. Not the government that you elect or supposedly elect. For, as usual, once they're elected, they simply do whatever they're told to do by their overseas interests and the corporations, and certainly not the citizens. Citizens are the last to be listened to, and that applies to every Western country in the world too. So if a Kiwibank was to be privatised, there goes the last hope of our retaining real competition in the banking world in New Zealand. All the banks are working very hard to accomplish this, of course. And from what I can see, our government is assisting them. I urge you, take the little bit of time and effort that it would take to put in your opinion. Make your feelings felt. The next issue I will briefly mention is the loss of the news media through TV1 and TV3. It is a question of the parasite killing the host. The media, the people that front the media, construct the programs and talk on the television to us, really imagine that they are doing a sound job of representing the news. They're indignant that the corporations that are funding the news have discovered that they're not being listened to, that nobody has any real interest in what they have to say because they've had proved to be totally the mouthpiece of the government, of the corporations. Nobody listens to them anymore. The real news you've got to go to social media to get, and they're desperate to try and clout down on that because it's the last bastion of free speech that we have at least available to us. So the media, as I say, the parasite killed its host because the people working in the media, while obeying the dictates of those who encouraged and sometimes even enforced them to take the correct political line, ended up not being listened to. One of the issues that the news media could have been speaking up about, and at least informing the people of this country, is AUKUS. Mr. Luxon has indicated that he is contemplating New Zealand joining in the AUKUS debacle. One of the measures that AUKUS wants to impose is a minimum of 2% of gross domestic product. The profit from that 2% of New Zealand's income must go towards defence. Of course, when they say defence, they mean offence. The Defence Force is not a defence force. It is an offensive force. And that is proved by the fact that the AUKUS group that we are contemplating, suicidally contemplating joining, has at least between 700, no, I beg your pardon, between 500 and 700 military bases dotted all over the world. America's instigation has generated 150 wars in the last 50 years. It has interfered with governments. It has assassinated people, murdered them, in other words. The biggest terrorist threat on earth today is not ISIS or a myriad of the other ones they point their finger to. It is America. It's not China that has invaded all these countries. It's not Russia that has done that. It is America. And we are tying our boat to America's intent. It's beyond any sensible contemplation. AUKUS is a sham. It is simply another way of milking taxpayers of their hard-earned cash to fund the industrial military complex, the parasites in America, in the USA. That's where our money's going. Australia has signed up to spending hundreds of billions of dollars on their nuclear submarine fleet. It's insane. There can be no common sense foundation to any of these decisions. Unless we do start speaking up and making our MPs represent us, not simply sit there like well-paid little parasites and give the okay to whatever the handful of people at the top who receive their instructions from overseas say they intend to do. You never hear one of them actually disagreeing with any decision being made. Are you telling me that 120 of them have the same opinion about everything that goes on in Parliament? Where have you managed to gather a group of 5 people who can all agree on one subject? The media doesn't propose alternative thinking on anything because it's well paid to support those few at the top who control the rest. Winston Peters goes overseas. He agrees to rub shoulders with the people like Blinken, who are one of the main instigators of the horrendous genocide going on in Gaza. Without the funds, without the material, the bombs, the weapons that America is providing Israel, Gaza couldn't keep going. It would stop. Yet our leaders are quite happily prepared to be associated with the people who are doing this horrific catastrophe. We are tying our nation to a situation that is going to destroy our economy in the long term and not far off, because Ukraine is about to fall. No matter what they spend on it, it cannot defeat Russia. I would think within the next 2 to 3 months, that horrific debacle that's cost the lives of between 500 and 600,000 Ukrainians will be at an end, and for nothing gained whatsoever except to enforce what was originally an agreement between all the parties that Ukraine would not join NATO and would not be a site for the nuclear weapons that America wanted to put on the borders with Russia. Why we are even participating in any small part in this is a complete and utter mystery to me. If Luxon is corrupt, it's not because he's stupid. Nobody looking at the facts of what's going on in the world today can be that stupid as to imagine joining AUKUS is going to benefit us. It has to be this. There are other reasons for it. And while we sit here silently and allow him to continue to behave in the way they are, with the banking, with our so-called defence force, it will continue. Eventually, and not far forward into the future, the economy of New Zealand is going to depend upon international trade that is free, fair, and arrived at without the interference of the bullies coming from the UK and the USA. Their days of complete control of world economy is finished. We need independence. We need a sovereign state that creates its own international agreements without being bullied and coerced and forced into them by the USA and the UK. Unless we make our politicians listen to this obvious fact, we are going to suffer greatly in the very near future. Already, BRICS economy is greater than SWIFT's. In other words, the alternative means of trading in the world has now swung in favour of the nations that are opposed to the USA. The greater number of people on earth now owe their allegiance to the opposing forces of America. And who can blame them? Look at the record. While we continue to obediently going on with this, I think we deserve what's going to happen to us. So I urge you, pick up your phones, get onto your computers, email your MPs, make them listen to you. You are the ones that are paying them. All the best to you. That's the end of my rant for today. Look after yourselves. For sure your government won't. So you'll have to do it for yourselves. All the best. Catch you another day. Cheerio.